The rattling of the stagecoach wheels against the dusty trail couldn't drown out the raised voice coming from inside, where Deanna Oakley was giving the driver a piece of her mind about the deplorable condition of the roads. It was 1875, and Lewiston, Montana Territory, was still a rough-edged frontier town that had sprung up following the gold rush. But Deanna didn't see that as an excuse for the bone-jarring journey she'd endured for the past 3 days. "I've paid good money to arrive with my spine intact, not rattled to pieces like dry kindling," she called up to the driver, her honey-brown hair coming loose from its pins as she leaned out the window. "Surely you could navigate around some of these larger holes." The other passengers, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple, looked mortified at her outburst. But Deanna had never been one to hold her tongue when something needed saying. Back in Boston, her forthright manner had earned her a reputation as a troublesome woman, one too educated and opinionated for her own good. That reputation, along with a family scandal involving her late father's finances, had driven her west to accept a teaching position in this remote corner of the frontier. As the stagecoach finally pulled into Lewiston's Main Street, Deanna smoothed down her travel-worn blue dress and gathered her modest belongings. The town was smaller than she had imagined, a single dusty street lined with wooden buildings, most looking hastily constructed. A saloon, general store, small hotel, and what appeared to be a blacksmith shop made up the heart of the settlement. Miss Oakley, a tall man with a weathered face, approached as she stepped down from the coach. "I'm Mayor Wilson. Welcome to Lewiston. I trust your journey wasn't too taxing." Deanna straightened her back, still feeling every bump in the road. "It was educational, sir. I've learned that what passes for roads out here would be considered criminal neglect back east." The mayor's eyebrows shot up, and a few onlookers paused to listen. Deanna was used to such reactions and refused to soften her candor merely to spare feelings. "Well, we're working on improvements," the mayor said stiffly. "The schoolhouse is ready for you. Term starts Monday, and we've arranged lodging at Mrs. Peterson's boarding house." As they spoke, a commotion erupted down the street. A group of cowboys had ridden into town, their horses kicking up dust as they dismounted outside the saloon. One man stood out among them, taller than the rest, with broad shoulders and an easy confidence in his movements. His dark hat was pulled low, but Deanna could see a strong jawline covered with a few days' worth of stubble. "Who are those men?" Deanna asked, her gaze lingering on the tall stranger. "Cattlemen from the Double F," Mayor Wilson replied. "They drive herds through these parts." "That's Brock Forrester. Leading them owns the largest spread in the county." As if sensing her gaze, Brock Forrester turned toward Deanna. Their eyes met across the dusty street, and Deanna felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. She quickly looked away, busying herself with her luggage. "I'd like to be shown to my accommodations now," she said to the mayor, determined not to be caught staring at some rough cowboy, no matter how commanding his presence. Mrs. Peterson's boarding house was modest but clean, with a small bedroom that would serve as Deanna's home for the foreseeable future. After washing the travel dust from her face and hands, Deanna ventured back outside to explore the town that would be her home. The schoolhouse stood at the edge of town, a simple one-room building with rows of wooden desks. Deanna ran her fingers over the teacher's desk at the front, mentally preparing lessons for the children of Lewiston. It ain't much, but it's better than nothing. Deanna whirled around to find Brock Forrester leaning against the doorframe, his tall frame nearly filling the entrance. Up close, she could see his eyes were a striking blue against his sun-darkened skin. "Mr. Forrester, is it?" "I wasn't aware that cowboys made a habit of sneaking up on unsuspecting women." Instead of taking offense, the corner of his mouth quirked up. "Not sneaking, madam. Just didn't want to interrupt your getting acquainted with your kingdom." "Hardly a kingdom," Deanna replied, gesturing to the bare-bones classroom. "To the children who have never had proper schooling, it will be." His voice held a sincerity that surprised her. "Some of the ranch hands' children will be coming too. Education's important out here, though not everyone sees it that way." Deanna studied him more carefully. He wasn't what she expected from a cattle rancher. There was an intelligence behind those blue eyes, and his speech was more refined than the other cowboys she'd encountered. "You seem to value education, Mr. Forrester. Call me Brock." He stepped into the room, removing his hat. "And yes, I do. Read whatever I can get my hands on. Not much time for it during cattle drives, but winter evenings on the ranch get long." "I've brought some books with me," Deanna said, warming slightly to the conversation, "though I fear they're mostly educational texts for the children." "Well, Miss Oakley, I'd be interested to hear what you plan to teach. The town's been waiting for a proper teacher for some time." Before Deanna could respond, a shout came from outside. "Brock Carlson's getting rowdy at the saloon, might need handling." Brock sighed, settling his hat back on his head. "Duty calls. Welcome to Lewiston, Miss Oakley. I suspect you'll make quite an impression here." As he turned to leave, Deanna called after him, "Mr. Forrester." He paused, glancing back. "I intend to make more than just an impression. I intend to make a difference." A slow smile spread across his face. "I don't doubt that for a second, madam." After he left, Deanna remained in the schoolhouse, trying to dismiss the unexpected connection she'd felt with the cowboy. She hadn't come west for romance. She'd come to escape scandal and forge a new life through her own determination. Monday morning arrived with Deanna standing nervously at the front of the classroom as children of various ages filed in. Some were well-dressed town kids, while others clearly came from ranching families, their clothes sturdy and practical. "Good morning," she said once they were seated. "I am Miss Oakley, your new teacher." A small boy in the back raised his hand immediately. "Miss Oakley, my pa says you're from back east where ladies talk fancy and don't know nothing about real life. Is that true?" Several children giggled, and Deanna saw her authority teetering before she'd even begun. She straightened her spine and fixed the boy with a steady gaze. "Your father is correct that I'm from Boston, but quite wrong about the rest. I know that don't know nothing is a double negative that actually means I do know something." She smiled as confusion crossed the boy's face. "And what I know is that every one of you deserves an education that will give you choices in life, whether you choose to stay in Lewiston or venture elsewhere." By lunchtime, Deanna had established herself as firm but fair, brooking no nonsense but praising effort enthusiastically. As the children ate their packed lunches in the schoolyard, she noticed Brock Forrester riding slowly past the school, tipping his hat when he caught her eye. The first weeks passed in a blur of activity. Deanna found herself increasingly drawn into the community's life. She attended church socials, helped organize a small library corner in the general store, and even stood up at a town meeting to advocate for better sanitation practices to prevent disease. "The water supply needs to be protected," she insisted, ignoring the murmurs from some of the men. "Cities back east have learned this lesson through devastating cholera outbreaks. We can be smarter." "Miss Oakley," one older rancher drawled, "we've managed just fine all these years without Boston ideas about water." "And I'm sure people said the same thing before every outbreak that killed their children," Deanna shot back, causing a hush to fall over the crowd. Brock stood from his seat near the back. "Miss Oakley makes a good point. My ranch has already dug a new well away from the cattle pens. Cost some effort, but we've had less sickness since." Their eyes met across the room, and Deanna felt a surge of gratitude for his support. As autumn progressed, Deanna found herself crossing paths with Brock more frequently. He donated lumber for new bookshelves in the schoolhouse, occasionally brought books he thought the children might enjoy, and twice had ridden out to bring back children from outlying farms when weather threatened. One Saturday afternoon, Deanna was struggling with an armload of supplies from the general store when Brock appeared beside her. "Allow me," he said, easily taking the heavy packages. "I'm perfectly capable of carrying my own purchases," Deanna responded automatically, then softened. "But thank you." They walked side by side toward Mrs. Peterson's boarding house. "I hear you've been giving the children riding lessons," Deanna remarked. Brock nodded. "Just the older ones whose parents approved. Thought they should know how to handle a horse properly if they're going to live out here." "It's very kind of you," Deanna said, then couldn't resist adding, "though I noticed the girls weren't included." Brock glanced at her with amusement. "You disapprove?" "I merely observe that girls are equally likely to need riding skills in this territory." You're right, Brock chuckled. I didn't want to step on any toes. Some parents are particular about their daughters. Perhaps I'll speak with the parents myself, Deanna said. After all, if they trust me to educate their daughters' minds, surely they can trust my judgment about practical skills as well. Brock was watching her with an expression that made her cheeks warm. You know, Miss Oakley, when you first arrived, some folks bet you wouldn't last a month out here. Deanna bristled. And did you place such a bet? No, madam. I figured any woman brave enough to travel across the country alone to teach in a frontier town had plenty of grit. They reached Mrs. Peterson's porch, and Brock set the packages down carefully. Miss Oakley, he said, suddenly seeming less sure of himself, there's a harvest dance next Saturday at the Jenkins barn. I wondered if you might allow me to escort you. The invitation caught Deanna off guard. She'd noticed the way her heart quickened whenever Brock was near, but had dismissed it as impractical. She'd come west to establish herself, not to fall under the spell of a handsome cowboy. I'm not certain that would be appropriate, Mr. Forrester. As the town's teacher, I must maintain a certain reputation. Forgive me, but I wasn't proposing anything improper, Brock said, a hint of hurt in his voice. Just a dance with the whole town watching. Deanna felt immediately contrite. Of course, I didn't mean to imply. That is, I would be honored to attend with you. His smile returned, brightening his whole face. I'll call for you at 6, then. As he walked away, Deanna found herself watching the confident set of his shoulders, wondering what she'd just agreed to. The harvest dance transformed the Jenkins barn into a warm haven of lantern light, music, and laughter. Deanna wore her best-dressed deep green wool with modest lace trim and had spent more time than usual arranging her hair. Brock arrived precisely at 6, looking remarkably different in his clean black suit, though he still wore his cowboy boots and his hair retained its slight wave despite attempts to tame it. Miss Oakley, he said, eyes widening appreciatively. You look beautiful. Thank you, Deanna replied, accepting his arm. You clean up rather well yourself. The dance was lively, with a fiddler and banjo player providing music while the town's residents twirled around the cleared barn floor. Deanna found herself enjoying the simple celebration far more than the stuffy Boston social events she'd attended in her previous life. During a break between dances, Brock brought her a cup of punch, and they stepped outside to escape the heat of the crowded barn. You dance very well for a cowboy, Deanna remarked, sipping her punch. My mother insisted, Brock replied. She came from Philadelphia originally, married my father when he was passing through on business. She never quite adjusted to ranch life, but she made sure I had what she called civilized skills alongside learning to rope and ride. She sounds like a remarkable woman. Is she still? She passed 5 years ago, pneumonia. His expression grew distant. My father followed a year later. The ranch has been my responsibility since. I'm sorry, Deanna said softly. I lost my parents as well, though in a different way. My father's business failed and he took his own life. The scandal destroyed what was left of our social standing. My mother never recovered and died shortly after. Brock studied her face in the moonlight. So you came west to escape all that, to start fresh, Deanna corrected. To be judged on my own merits rather than my father's mistakes or society's expectations. And how do you find it so far? Brock asked. Deanna considered the question. Challenging. Frustrating at times, but also freeing. People here may find me outspoken, but at least they respond to what I say rather than who my family was. I admire that about you, Brock said quietly. Your willingness to speak your mind. It's refreshing after growing up with people who say one thing to your face and another behind your back. The music changed to a slower melody, drifting out through the barn doors. Shall we? Brock offered his hand. This dance was different, closer, more intimate. Deanna could feel the strength in Brock's arm around her waist, smell the clean scent of soap and leather that clung to him. You've surprised me, Miss Oakley, Brock said as they moved together. When you first arrived, all fire and Boston propriety, I never thought we'd find common ground. And have we? Deanna asked, looking up at him. I believe we have, he replied, his voice deepening, more than I expected. The moment was broken by a commotion at the barn entrance. A young ranch hand burst in, breathing hard. "Fire at the Miller place," he shouted. "They're trapped inside." The dancing stopped instantly as men began organizing a response. Brock immediately took charge, directing some to bring water barrels while others gathered horses. "Stay here," he told Deanna firmly. "I will do no such thing," she replied, already gathering her skirts. "I have first aid training from the Sisters of Mercy in Boston." Before he could argue further, Deanna was striding toward Mrs. Peterson, who was organizing the women to gather bandages and medical supplies. The Miller farm was visible from town, an ominous orange glow against the night sky. By the time they arrived, the barn was fully engulfed, and flames were licking at the main house. Men formed a bucket brigade while others tried to control panicking livestock. Deanna found Mrs. Miller clutching her baby, watching in horror as her home burned. "My husband and son," she sobbed. They went back for the family Bible. Just then, a figure emerged from the smoke-filled doorway, coughing and dragging another. It was Mr. Miller, pulling his unconscious teenage son. Deanna rushed forward with others to help them away from the building. The boy wasn't breathing. Drawing on her training, Deanna cleared his airway and began chest compressions, ignoring the soot staining her dress and the chaos around her. After tense moments, the boy coughed violently and drew a ragged breath. Hours later, the fire was finally contained, though the barn was destroyed and the house badly damaged. The Millers would stay with neighbors until repairs could be made. Deanna was exhausted, her dress ruined, her face streaked with soot. "You're remarkable," Brock said, appearing beside her with a canteen of water. "Half the men here couldn't have kept their heads like you did." Deanna accepted the water gratefully. "I merely did what was needed. That boy would have died without your quick thinking." Brock's eyes held new respect. "I've never met a woman quite like you, Deanna Oakley." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and Deanna felt its impact like a physical touch. "Perhaps you haven't been meeting the right women, Mr. Forrester." His laugh was warm in the cool night air. "Perhaps I haven't, until now." The Miller fire marked a turning point. As word spread of Deanna's actions, the townsfolk's perception of her changed. Her outspokenness was now seen as a strength rather than an Eastern eccentricity. Parents began to seek her advice about their children's education and future prospects. Even the town council occasionally asked for her input on matters affecting Lewiston's development. Deanna and Brock's friendship deepened as autumn gave way to winter. He often escorted her to community events, brought books for her classroom when he returned from business in larger towns, and sometimes simply appeared at the end of the school day to walk her home. "You don't need to check on me so frequently," Deanna told him one snowy afternoon as they walked through town. "I'm perfectly capable of navigating Lewiston on my own." "I'm well aware of your capabilities," Brock replied, his breath visible in the cold air. "Perhaps I simply enjoy your company." Deanna felt a blush rise to her cheeks that had nothing to do with the biting wind. "People are talking, you know. People always talk," Brock said dismissively. "Does it bother you?" Deanna considered the question. In Boston, such attention would have concerned her greatly. Here, she found herself caring less about appearances and more about her own happiness. "Not as much as it perhaps should," she admitted. As Christmas approached, Deanna threw herself into organizing a holiday program for the school children. She was determined that even here on the frontier, they would experience some of the cultural traditions she valued. "You're working too hard," Mrs. Peterson chided one evening as Deanna sat by the fire, sewing costumes for the nativity scene. "The children deserve a proper Christmas celebration," Deanna insisted, pricking her finger for the third time that hour. "And you deserve some rest," the older woman countered. "That Forrester boy has been asking after your health, you know, says you look tired." Deanna looked up sharply. "He said that," Mrs. Peterson smiled knowingly. "He cares for you, dear. Anyone with eyes can see it." Deanna returned to her sewing, trying to ignore the pleasant warmth that spread through her at the thought. "Mr. Forrester and I are friends. He's been very supportive of the school." "Is that all it is?" Mrs. Peterson asked gently. Deanna didn't answer, uncertain herself of what was developing between them. The Christmas program was held in the newly constructed church. the only building in town large enough to hold the entire community. Parents beamed as their children recited poetry, sang carols, and enacted the nativity scene. Deanna stood at the back, directing proceedings with quiet efficiency, her heart swelling with pride at her students' accomplishments. Afterward, as families mingled and shared refreshments, Brock approached her with a small package wrapped in brown paper. "Merry Christmas, Miss Oakley," he said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Mr. Forrester, you shouldn't have," Deanna protested, but accepted the gift nonetheless. "Open it," he encouraged. Inside was a leather-bound copy of Tennyson's poems, its pages gilded and pristine. Deanna ran her fingers over the embossed cover, deeply touched. "How did you know I love Tennyson?" she asked. "You quoted him once when we were discussing education." "You said something about knowledge comes, but wisdom lingers," I remembered. Deanna was speechless that he had noticed such a detail. "Thank you. It's perfect." She reached into her pocket and withdrew a small package of her own. "I have something for you as well, though it's not nearly as fine." Brock unwrapped the hand-knitted scarf, dark blue to match his eyes. "You made this," Deanna nodded, suddenly self-conscious. "Mrs. Peterson helped with the difficult parts. I'm afraid my domestic skills aren't as developed as my academic ones." Brock immediately wrapped the scarf around his neck, smiling broadly. "It's excellent craftsmanship and will serve me well on the cold rides between town and the ranch." Their eyes met, and Deanna felt something shift between them, something warm and promising. The moment was interrupted by Mayor Wilson calling for everyone's attention to thank Deanna for organizing the program. As she moved forward to acknowledge the applause, Deanna glanced back at Brock, who was watching her with unmistakable admiration. Winter settled hard over Lewiston, with heavy snows that sometimes made travel between outlying ranches and town impossible. School attendance became sporadic, as weather dictated which children could safely make the journey. Deanna adapted, sending work home with students to share with those who couldn't attend, and using the smaller class sizes to provide more individualized instruction. She saw less of Brock during this time, as ranch work kept him busy despite the weather. When a particularly vicious blizzard struck in late January, school was closed for over a week. Deanna used the time to plan future lessons and read by Mrs. Peterson's fire, but found herself watching the road for any sign of Brock's tall figure. When the weather finally broke, Deanna reopened the school, though only half her students were able to attend. She was in the middle of a geography lesson when the door opened, bringing a blast of cold air and Brock Forrester, looking more rugged than usual with several days' growth of beard. "Pardon the interruption," he said, nodding to the children. "Miss Oakley, might I have a word?" Stepping outside, Deanna saw the concern in his eyes. "What's wrong?" "The Thompsons' place was cut off by the storm. I just reached them this morning. Their youngest, Emily, is sick with fever. Mrs. Thompson is beside herself, and there's no way to get the doctor from the county seat with the passes still snowed in." Deanna didn't hesitate. "I'll come, I have some medical knowledge." "It's a hard ride," Brock warned. "Then we'd best get started," Deanna replied, already returning to the classroom to dismiss the children and gather her things. An hour later, bundled in every warm garment she owned, Deanna sat astride a steady mare Brock had brought for her. The ride to the Thompson ranch was indeed difficult, with snow drifts higher than the horses in some places, but Brock knew the territory well and found them safe passage. "You ride well," he observed as they navigated a particularly tricky section of trail. "My father insisted I learn as a girl," Deanna explained. "He said a proper Bostonian should be accomplished in all the refined sports." "I doubt he meant frontier trail riding in a blizzard," Brock said with a smile that warmed her despite the biting cold. The Thompson family's relief at their arrival was palpable. 8-year-old Emily lay feverish on her bed, her breathing labored. Deanna examined her carefully, recognizing the symptoms of a severe chest infection. "We need to break the fever and ease her breathing," Deanna told Mrs. Thompson. "Do you have any willow bark, honey, mustard for a poultice?" For the next 2 days, Deanna barely left Emily's bedside, applying poultices, administering herbal teas, and bathing the child with cool water to bring down her temperature. Brock stayed as well, helping Mr. Thompson with urgent ranch work and keeping the fire well stocked to warm the cabin. On the third night, as the family finally slept, Deanna sat by Emily's bed, exhausted but relieved as the child's breathing had become easier and her fever had broken. Brock brought her a cup of hot coffee and sat beside her. "You saved her life," he said quietly. Deanna shook her head. "I only did what anyone with knowledge would have done." "But that's just it," Brock insisted. "Not everyone would have ridden through a snowstorm to help a family they barely know. Not everyone would have stayed awake for days tending a sick child. I suppose we reveal our true character in how we respond to others' needs," Deanna murmured, too tired to maintain her usual composure. Brock's hand found hers, his calloused fingers warm against her skin. "You've revealed yours many times over since coming to Lewiston." They sat in companionable silence, hands joined, as the fire crackled and Emily slept peacefully. The ride back to town 2 days later was easier as the weather had improved, though the temperature remained bitterly cold. They traveled mostly in comfortable silence, both lost in thought. As the buildings of Lewiston came into view, Brock slowed his horse. "Deanna," he said, using her given name deliberately, "these past few days have made something very clear to me." Deanna turned to him, her heart suddenly racing faster than their gentle pace warranted. "I've developed feelings for you that go beyond friendship," Brock continued, his blue eyes intent on hers. "I know you came west to establish yourself independently, not to find a husband, and I respect that, but I wanted you to know where I stand." Deanna was momentarily speechless, a rare occurrence for her. Part of her wanted to retreat behind propriety, to remind him that such declarations were premature. But another part, the part that had learned to speak her truth on the frontier, wouldn't allow her to dissemble. "I've developed feelings for you as well," she admitted, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. "Though I'm not entirely sure what to do about them." Brock's face lit up with a smile that made her breath catch. "We don't have to do anything right away. I just wanted to be honest with you the way you're always honest with everyone else." Deanna appreciated his understanding. "I need time, Brock. This isn't a decision I can make lightly." "I understand. I'm a patient man." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Had to be to break the wildest horses on my ranch." Deanna laughed, the tension broken. "Are you comparing me to an unbroken horse, Mr. Forrester?" "Only in spirit, Miss Oakley." His grin was infectious. "Only in spirit." As they rode into town, Deanna was acutely aware of the curious glances from townsfolk who had noticed their absence. Gossip would spread quickly, but for once, Deanna found she didn't care. She had faced a blizzard, helped save a child's life, and acknowledged feelings she had been denying for months. Small town talk seemed inconsequential by comparison. Spring came late that year, but when it finally arrived, it transformed the landscape with explosive growth. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows, and the surrounding hills turned a vibrant green. Deanna took her students outdoors whenever possible, teaching botany with real specimens and geography by having them map the local terrain. Her relationship with Brock had settled into a comfortable pattern. He called on her regularly, they attended community events together, and occasionally rode out to enjoy picnics in the countryside. Deanna found herself looking forward to these outings more than anything else, though she maintained a proper decorum that kept the gossips at bay. One warm Saturday in May, Brock invited her to see the Double F Ranch for the first time. "The spring calves are old enough to be entertaining now," he explained, "and I'd like to show you my home." The ranch was larger and more established than Deanna had imagined. A substantial main house built of squared logs with proper glass windows stood surrounded by various outbuildings, corrals, and bunkhouses for the ranch hands. Fields stretched in all directions, with cattle grazing on the lush spring grass. "This is impressive," Deanna said as Brock helped her down from her horse. "You've built quite an operation here." "My father started it," Brock corrected. "I've just expanded it some." "Don't discount your accomplishments," Deanna said firmly. "False modesty doesn't become you." Brock laughed, a sound Deanna had come to treasure. "There's that sharp tongue. I was wondering when it would make an appearance today." He gave her a tour of the property, introducing her to his foreman and ranch hands, showing her the spring calves that frolicked in the nearest pasture, and finally bringing her to the main house. Inside, Deanna was surprised by the blend of frontier practicality and unexpected refinement. Solid furniture built to last was softened by colorful quilts. Bookshelves lined one wall of the main room, filled with well-worn volumes. My mother's influence, Brock explained, noting her interest in the books. She believed civilization required literature, even on the frontier. She was right, Deanna said, examining the diverse collection that ranged from practical manuals on animal husbandry to classics of literature and philosophy. In the kitchen, an older woman was preparing a meal. "Miss Deanna, this is Mrs. Hawkins, who's kept me fed and the house in order since my mother passed." Mrs. Hawkins wiped her hands on her apron and gave Deanna a warm smile. "Pleased to finally meet you, Miss Oakley. This one talks about you constantly. Does he now?" Deanna raised an eyebrow at Brock, who actually looked embarrassed. "Only good things," he assured her. Then he must be leaving out half the story," Deanna replied with a smile. "I'm known to be quite difficult at times." Mrs. Hawkins laughed approvingly. "A man needs challenging, Miss Oakley. Keeps him from getting too set in his ways." After a delicious meal of roast beef and fresh vegetables from the ranch's kitchen garden, Brock suggested they walk down to the creek that ran along the property's eastern edge. The late afternoon sun cast a golden light over the landscape as they strolled side by side. "I can see why you love it here," Deanna said as they reached the creek, where clear water bubbled over smooth stones. "It has a beauty all its own. Different from Boston, I imagine," Brock said. "Very different, but I find I don't miss the city as much as I thought I would." Deanna turned to face him. "I've found something here that I never had there." "And what's that?" Brock asked, his voice softening. "Freedom to be myself. Respect based on my own actions rather than my family name or social connections. And..." She hesitated, then decided to speak her mind as she always did. "And someone who appreciates me for exactly who I am, sharp tongue and all." Brock stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "I more than appreciate you, Deanna. I love you every outspoken, determined, compassionate inch of you." Deanna's heart seemed to stop, then race ahead. "Brock, you don't need to say anything," he continued. "I know you need time, I just wanted you to know the truth of how I feel." But Deanna had spent too long speaking her mind to stop now. "I love you too," she said simply. "I think I have for quite some time, but I was afraid to admit it, even to myself." The joy that spread across Brock's face made Deanna's breath catch. He reached for her hands, holding them gently in his larger ones. "Deanna Oakley, you are the most remarkable woman I've ever known. Would you consider becoming my wife? Not right away," he added quickly, "but when you're ready." Deanna looked up at him, this man who had shown her nothing but respect and admiration, who valued her mind and her forthright nature when others had seen them as flaws. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and certain. "Yes, I will." Brock's kiss was gentle at first, then deepened with a passion that made Deanna's knees weak. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, the sun was setting behind the distant mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. "Beautiful," Deanna murmured, looking at the sunset. "Yes, you are," Brock replied, his arms still around her waist. Deanna gave him a look. "That's terribly cliché, Mr. Forrester." His laugh echoed across the creek. "I suppose I'll need to work on more original compliments if I'm to keep up with your quick mind." "See that you do," Deanna said primly, but couldn't maintain the stern expression as happiness bubbled up inside her. They announced their engagement at the town's Independence Day celebration, where it was received with knowing smiles rather than surprise. Plans were made for a September wedding, giving Deanna time to complete the school term and make arrangements for her replacement during a honeymoon trip to Denver. The wedding preparations brought new challenges, as Deanna found herself navigating between her own preferences and community expectations. "You really ought to have a white dress," Mrs. Peterson insisted. "It's becoming the fashion everywhere." "I prefer blue," Deanna countered. "And I'll only wear this dress once, so it might as well be in a color I enjoy." Similar discussions arose over everything from the wedding cake to the ceremony itself. Deanna held firm on matters important to her while compromising on others, always speaking her mind but learning when to stand her ground and when to bend. Brock supported her through it all, often mediating between Deanna and the well-meaning townswomen who had taken charge of various aspects of the celebration. "You don't always have to fight every battle," he told her one evening as they walked after a particularly contentious planning meeting. "Some things aren't worth the energy," Deanna sighed. "I know, I'm trying to choose my moments better. It's just that I've spent so long defending my right to have opinions at all that sometimes I forget not every opinion needs defending." Brock squeezed her hand. "Your passionate nature is one of the things I love most about you, but I hate seeing you exhausted from arguments over cake frosting," Deanna laughed. "When you put it that way, it does seem rather silly." As the wedding day approached, an unexpected complication arose. Deanna received a letter from a cousin in Boston, informing her that a distant aunt had passed away and left Deanna a small inheritance. The letter included a train ticket to Boston and a request for Deanna to return east to settle the estate matters. "You should go," Brock said when she showed him the letter. "It's your family legacy." "The wedding is in 3 weeks," Deanna protested. "I can't just leave. We can postpone if necessary," Brock assured her. "Family matters are important." Deanna studied his face, seeing only sincere concern. "You truly wouldn't mind waiting. I've found the woman I want to spend my life with," Brock said simply. "A few more weeks or months won't matter in the grand scheme of things." Deanna made her decision. "No, I left Boston behind for good reasons. Whatever inheritance my aunt left can be handled by attorneys. My life is here now with you, with this community, with the school and the children." She tore the train ticket in half. "I'm staying right here." Brock pulled her into his arms. "Have I told you lately how much I admire your certainty once you've made up your mind?" "Not since yesterday," Deanna replied with a smile. The wedding day dawned clear and perfect, with a blue sky that matched Deanna's dress. The ceremony was held in the church, with the entire town in attendance. Deanna walked down the aisle alone, proud and independent to the last, until she joined hands with Brock at the altar. Their vows were traditional, but they had each written personal promises that they shared before the exchange of rings. "Deanna," Brock said, his voice steady and sure, "I promise to honor your independent spirit and your forthright nature. I will never ask you to be less than who you are. I promise to be your partner in all things, to respect your mind as well as your heart, and to build a life with you based on mutual respect and enduring love." Deanna, usually so composed, felt tears threatening as she spoke her own vows. "Brock, I promise to stand beside you in all of life's challenges, to speak honestly but listen openly, to build our future with the same determination I've applied to everything else in my life. I promise to love you not just with passion but with steadfastness, and to create a home with you filled with books, ideas, and the freedom to be our truest selves." As the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Brock kissed her with a restrained passion appropriate to a church full of onlookers. The celebration afterward was joyous, with dancing, feasting, and speeches well into the night. Their honeymoon journey to Denver was Deanna's first experience of luxury since leaving Boston. Brock had reserved rooms at the city's finest hotel, arranged for theater tickets, and planned visits to bookstores and museums that he knew would interest his educated bride. "You've gone to a great deal of trouble," Deanna remarked as they settled into their hotel suite. "I wanted our first weeks as husband and wife to be special," Brock replied, "and I thought you might enjoy a taste of city culture after more than a year in Lewiston." Deanna wrapped her arms around his neck. "It's wonderful, but you know what I'm looking forward to most?" "What's that, Mrs. Forrester?" Brock asked, the new name still sounding novel and exciting. "Going home to our ranch and beginning our life together." The transition from independent teacher to rancher's wife brought both joys and challenges. Deanna maintained her involvement with the school, serving on the education committee and occasionally substituting when the new teacher needed assistance. But she also embraced ranch life with characteristic determination, learning about cattle management, keeping the ranch's accounts in meticulous order, and establishing a larger vegetable garden that supplied both the main house and the bunkhouse. "You've taken to this life better than I dared hope," Brock told her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching a spectacular sunset. "I'm adaptable," Deanna replied, leaning against his shoulder. "And it helps that I have a husband who values my contributions beyond the traditional wifely duties." Their partnership flourished over the next year. The Double F prospered under their joint management, with Deanna's practical business sense complementing Brock's ranching expertise. They established a small library for the ranch hands, many of whom were eager to improve their reading skills during the quiet winter months. When Deanna discovered she was expecting a child, she approached the news with the same straightforward attitude she brought to everything else. "We'll need to prepare," she told Brock matter-of-factly after sharing the news. "I intend to continue as many of my activities as possible, but arrangements will have to be made for when I cannot." Brock, once he recovered from the initial joy of impending fatherhood, smiled at her practical approach. "I would expect nothing less, though I hope you'll allow yourself to rest when needed." Deanna softened. "I will be sensible, I promise. This child is too important for me to take unnecessary risks." As her pregnancy progressed, Deanna did indeed adapt her activities, but refused to be relegated to invalid status, as was common for expectant mothers of the era. She continued to ride until her 6th month, managed the ranch books throughout, and maintained her correspondence with educational journals back east. Their son, James William Forrester, arrived on a stormy night in April 1878. The birth was difficult, and for the first time since knowing her, Brock saw genuine fear in Deanna's eyes as the labor stretched into its 2nd day. "I'm right here," he assured her, holding her hand through the contractions. "You're the strongest person I know. You can do this." When their son finally made his entrance into the world, Deanna's exhaustion gave way to overwhelming joy. "He's perfect," she whispered, cradling the infant in her arms. "Look what we've created." Brock, his eyes suspiciously moist, kissed her forehead. "He'll have your determination and sharp mind, I'm certain of it. And your kindness," Deanna added, looking up at her husband with unguarded love. "That's the quality I hope he inherits most." Motherhood brought new perspectives to Deanna's forthright nature. She remained as outspoken as ever on matters of principle, but found herself softening on issues that once would have provoked heated argument. "You're mellowing," Brock teased one day as they watched 3-year-old James playing with the ranch dogs. "Not mellowing," Deanna corrected. "Just choosing my battles more carefully. Some things are worth fighting for, others are merely opinions that don't require defending to the death. Like whether the town should paint the new schoolhouse yellow or white." Brock suggested, referring to a recent town meeting where Deanna had unexpectedly conceded the point. "Exactly. The color matters less than the fact that we're building a larger school to accommodate more children." She smiled as James successfully threw a stick for the patient collie. "Though I still maintain that white shows dirt more quickly and is therefore impractical." Brock laughed and pulled her close. "There's the woman I married." As the years passed, the Forresters added to their family a daughter, Elizabeth Ann, arrived 2 years after James, followed by another son, Thomas Henry, 3 years later. Deanna approached each child's education with the same passion she had brought to teaching, creating a home filled with books, ideas, and lively discussion. The Double F Ranch grew as well, becoming one of the most successful operations in the territory. Brock and Deanna's partnership became legendary in the region, the educated Eastern woman with the sharp tongue, and the steady cowboy who valued her mind as much as her heart. When Montana achieved statehood in 1889, Brock was asked to serve on various committees helping to establish the new state government. He always insisted that Deanna accompany him to Helena for these meetings, valuing her insight on matters ranging from education policy to land management. "You should be the one serving officially," he told her after one particularly productive session where her suggestion about school funding had been adopted. "You have more good ideas in a day than most of these politicians have in a year." Deanna smiled, watching the state capitol being constructed in the distance. Perhaps someday women will serve in such capacities. Until then, I'll continue to speak through you when necessary and directly when possible. And I'll continue to listen, Brock promised, as I have since that first day you arrived in Lewiston and told the mayor exactly what you thought of our roads. By the turn of the century, with their children grown and pursuing their own paths, James managing part of the ranch operations, Elizabeth attending college in Denver, and Thomas apprenticed to a lawyer in Helena, Brock and Deanna had settled into a comfortable rhythm of partnership that had only deepened over the years. On their 25th wedding anniversary, the entire community gathered to celebrate the couple whose unlikely romance had become a cornerstone of local lore. Former students, now adults with children of their own, came to honor the teacher who had demanded excellence and spoken her mind when others would have remained silent. During the celebration, the mayor, not Wilson, who had long since retired, called for attention to make a presentation. Brock and Deanna Forrester, he announced, have contributed to this community in countless ways over the past quarter-century. Their donation of land for our new school, their establishment of the county's first public library, and their support of countless families in times of need have made Lewiston a better place. He unveiled a plaque that would hang in the town hall, commemorating their contributions. Deanna, now in her 50s with silver threading through her honey-brown hair, stood beside Brock, who remained tall and strong despite the years of hard ranch work. "Would either of you like to say a few words?" the mayor asked. Brock looked to Deanna with a smile. "I believe my wife might have something to say. She usually does." Amidst appreciative laughter, Deanna stepped forward. 25 years ago, I came to Lewiston thinking I would stay just long enough to establish myself before moving on to somewhere more civilized. I had no intention of falling in love, especially not with a cowboy. She glanced at Brock with a warmth that belied her teasing words. But this community, and this man in particular, showed me that true civilization isn't found in city buildings or social conventions. It's found in how we treat one another, how we build meaningful lives together, and how we face challenges with both determination and compassion. Deanna looked out at the gathered townsfolk, many of whom had once been scandalized by her outspoken nature. "Thank you for accepting me, sharp tongue and all. And thank you for giving me a place where speaking my mind became not a liability but a strength." As the celebration continued around them, Brock led Deanna to a quiet corner of the garden where they could have a moment alone. "You know," he said, taking her hands in his, "when I first saw you stepping down from that stagecoach, giving the driver a piece of your mind about the state of the roads, I never imagined we'd be standing here 25 years later." Deanna raised an eyebrow. "No, what did you imagine?" "That you'd either leave within a month, unable to tolerate frontier life, or that you'd stay and continue to shake up the town with your Eastern ideas and uncompromising standards." "And instead," Brock smiled, the crinkles around his eyes deepening. "Instead, you did stay and shake things up, but you also put down roots deeper than anyone expected. You changed this town, Deanna, but it changed you too." Deanna nodded thoughtfully. "I came here thinking I needed to prove myself, to establish my independence. I didn't realize that true strength comes not just from standing alone, but from choosing the right partner to stand beside." Brock brushed a strand of silver-threaded hair from her face. "Any regrets about the life we've built here instead of the one you might have had back east?" Deanna's answer was immediate and characteristically direct. "Not one. This life, our ranch, our children, this community we've helped build has been richer and more meaningful than anything I could have imagined that first day." She leaned forward and kissed him, no longer concerned about propriety after 25 years of marriage. "I love you, Brock Forrester. Your patience with my sharp tongue, your respect for my mind, and your steadfast heart have made these the best years of my life." "And they're far from over," Brock replied, returning her kiss with undiminished passion. "We have grandchildren to spoil, more community projects to support, and many more sunsets to watch from our porch." As they rejoined the celebration, Deanna reflected on the journey that had brought her from a scandal-ridden Boston family to this moment respected, loved, and valued for exactly who she was, sharp tongue and all. The outspoken Boston schoolteacher and the steady Montana cowboy had built something neither could have created alone, a partnership based on respect, a family founded on love, and a legacy that would endure long after they were gone. In the years that followed, as their family expanded with grandchildren, and the 20th century brought new challenges and opportunities to the West, Brock and Deanna remained a formidable team. Deanna never lost her propensity for speaking her mind, and Brock never stopped appreciating the forthright woman who had captured his heart that long ago day when a dusty stagecoach delivered the new schoolteacher to Lewiston. Their story became part of local legend, the sharp-tongued Eastern woman and the cowboy who loved how she spoke her mind, an unlikely love story that proved that true partnership thrives not despite our differences, but because of them.